welcome to this episode of Perspectives. Today we're going to be joined by the remarkable Dr. Julie Smith, author of Why Has Nobody Told Me This Before? And I found out in our conversation it's been translated into over 30 languages so far and counting. Her and her family had a dream of going to everywhere where it was published in different languages, and now the book's more travelled than she is. So I thought that was fantastic. Dr. Julie Smith. Julie is a clinical psychologist with a decade professional experience. She's also a social media star. So she's started on TikTok at the start of COVID and now has nearly 3.3 million followers there. I know on her Instagram, when I checked, it was over 800,000 followers, and it all just went viral. She started putting out minute-long segments on TikTok to help people through tough times, which I thought was fantastic. And out of it, it just ballooned and it grew, and she started appearing on TV. She started spreading the news about educational segments on how you can help yourself. She decided why should it only be people who could afford therapy that would get this information, so she gave it away freely. And as a result of it, it just exploded into this best-selling book now, and she's just delightful. She's focused mainly on therapies, and she's combined it into a book that's really practical. We dive into some really simple ways that we can help ourselves with thinking biases, with distortions about how we see the world and how we see ourselves, and how those distortions can lead to holding ourselves back, to procrastinating or not enjoying the moment fully. And all of it's research-based, all of it she's put around the world, and now she's combined it into this book that's just fantastic. And as I said, really worth listening. So I trust you enjoy this conversation with Dr. Julie Smith. And as you know, we have no ads throughout this, although technically what I'm about to say potentially is a little bit of an ad. We are doing really well. We love that you follow us. We love that you dig it. I'm so grateful that you take the time out of your day, out of all the things you could be doing, to listen to this podcast. I really appreciate you. Or watch this podcast, however you're reaching us. It would be so helpful if you could help us out and head over to YouTube and become a subscriber, or get on your phone and click on the bit where it's, oh, my mum's just texted me. It's so nice. And click on the bit where it's the app for podcasts. And if you could subscribe, leave a review, leave a ranking, that would be wonderful. It really helps us with the ratings. As you know, we have hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of people viewing a podcast episode, and it's just not showing in the rankings. So you helped out so much with the last one. I think we got a boost of 1,600 subscribers. So if you could join us in this round, I'd be so grateful. Thank you so much. And leave a review. If you're loving what we're doing, love to hear from you. Really would. Anyway, here's the podcast. Here is Dr. Julie Smith. So what's been the most delightful thing about this book coming out? What are you enjoying the most?
Do you know what? It was probably the sort of emotional roller coaster of it all, where you feel like initially you feel like you're free falling, like you're so vulnerable when you put your work out into the world, right? And no number of edits could ever stop that vulnerable feeling, I think. And but to have it land so well, not only with people in general, but also with other professionals. I think that was one of my biggest sort of vulnerable feelings was, what will my professional peers say, and other psychologists, and so the sort of comments from and lovely reviews from other psychologists and from journalists as well, you know, to have a professional writer say, I like how this is written, that sits with me, and I'll hold on to those forever, because I think I knew from the beginning, I knew the psychology, but to write a book, I wanted to do it justice and write it well. So, because I'm a bit of a booky person, and so yeah, that's been really nice.
Something about holding the book. I've got the book here for those who are watching this on video. Why has nobody told me this before? And I've got, if you can see me, I've got all my highlights and my notes. I don't treat books well, but that's my way of treating a book well, if that makes sense.
It's a well-loved book, yes. You know, better than a pristine one on the coffee table that's never been touched.
I interact with them. Yeah, I love to interact with it. And what's it been like being able to talk about and get these types of ideas out into the world? How's that feeling for you?
It's been incredible, and such an amazing opportunity to meet, you know, incredible, really inspiring people like yourself, and you get to talk about these things and break them down and learn a bit more. And I think that's, you know, the whole process has been so enjoyable because I just love the subject. I'm just fascinated by humans and how complex we are and simple in other ways. And so it's something I would happily continue to learn about for free for the rest of my life. So yeah, it's an absolute privilege for me.
That's wonderful. And what was the motivation for the book for you? What was it that inspired you to do this?
Sure. So, I was working as a psychologist, first of all in the NHS in the UK, and then I started a very small private practice, just me in the back garden, seeing one client at a time, in sort of while my kids were at school and stuff like that. And I had lots of people coming through that once they had the educational aspect of therapy, a lot of people don't realize that there is some education in therapy. You do a lot of talking, but you also learn a bit about how your brain works, how you can impact on your emotional state, how you can sort of break cycles in relationships and that kind of thing. And I found that a lot of people, once they had that bit of education, they were raring to go. They found it so empowering that there was this quite simple set of tools that if you take it seriously and you put it in place every day, it can make a really big difference. And so the title of the book is an amalgamation of lots of different ways that people would say to me, how on earth has nobody told me this before? Why has no one told me this before? I wish I'd learned this in school, those kind of
Yes.
things. And so I would come home, chirping on about that kind of thing to my husband. This should be available. People shouldn't have to pay to come see people like me to find out that stuff. So he said, well, go on then, make it available, put some stuff out there. And we made a few terrible YouTube videos, and it got sort of nice responses and stuff. And then at the same time we discovered TikTok. So my husband said, this is where everybody seems to be, and so if you want to share education, why not put some on here? And my initial response was, no way, I will be trolled out of there. Everyone was dancing, there was lovely comedy and dancing and that kind of thing, but there was nothing that we could find in the way of sort of education or anything like, especially not on mental health. And so yeah, the incredible response was totally unexpected. I thought it'd be one of those projects that you do for a while and then it fizzles out and you move on to something else.
Yep.
2 years later, here we are.
Yes. And it's at 3.5 million on TikTok?
On TikTok, I think we're like 3.3, but across platforms, we're over 4 million now. Yeah. So it's really growing on sort of Instagram and YouTube now. And so the community is sort of growing on these different platforms in their own ways. Yeah.
And I think the timing of it was fantastic coming into COVID. One of the things I've said a lot is we came into COVID as prepared mentally as we were ever going to be. And some of us were not prepared mentally. And I think what you've done and your message is helping us for the next wave that is going to maybe dunk us, how we can perhaps rise above the wave. That's what I love about what you do.
Yeah. And I think, the timing was everything on that. I mean, there were times during the pandemic that we were growing about, 100,000 followers a month at some points. And that's not because I'm great. The profile wasn't about me. Every video, the main sort of requirement I had for myself was it has to have some sort of message, some sort of value to it, some sort of educational element to it. And however we can make that engaging, then, all the best. But it wasn't, because it wasn't about me. People were only clicking follow if they were interested in having that kind of information. And, so yes, everybody was at home and on their phones, but to hit follow on an account that's purely about mental health education said a lot about what we were all dealing with, I think.
Yes, absolutely. And if I can be better prepared for the uncertainty of the next crisis that's coming down the pike right now in one form or another, that's got to be something that's worth me investing the time in. That's where I want to put my time and effort. And clearly millions of people resonate with that message as well. It's wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where the thing has been all the way along, that and I think in the introduction, this isn't the path to a problem-free life. Life is full of problems. Life is full of uncertainty. It throws stuff at you. You think you're doing okay, and then something slaps you in the face, and this is really an arsenal of tools that you can use to get through those things. Yes. So you're much more equipped to deal with those ups and downs if you've got a few tools under your belt to pull out at the right times. And actually learning those tools is best done when you're all right, when things are kind of okay.
Yes.
Then you can get good practice at using them so that when the really tough times hit, you've had a bit of practice at, using those things to help you out of
So
hard
you write
times.
about CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and a couple of other practices as well. Can you introduce our
Yeah.
viewers? Because I know they're all geeky like me and they love this world. So
Yeah.
what's CBT?
So DBT is short for dialectical behavior
So
therapy.
let me apologize. I said CBT because I saw some
Uh,
cognitive behavioral therapy in your book as well. So I think you do both, don't you?
there's a few different, the sort of main approaches that are covered in the book. I've taken bits from CBT, which is
Yep.
cognitive behavior therapy, DBT, dialectical behavior therapy, and ACT, or ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy, and also a bit of sort of compassion focused therapy. So there's a mix of those sorts of different modalities in there, but they all have a lot of overlap, so that they're not sort of conflicting
Sure.
methodologies, really. They're
No,
things that you
I
can
didn't
bring
think so. I
together.
thought they were very
Yeah.
complementary. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so I guess CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, then is just a fancy way of saying thoughts and behavior. So that sort of cognitive aspect is, the thoughts that are going through your head, and I guess the main sort of premise behind CBT is that your thoughts, so the sorts of things that you're saying to yourself in your head and the things you're thinking, the way you treat your body, your physical state, and your behavior all influence your emotional state, and your emotional state influences those in return. So it creates this sort of constant movement between the two, where there is no on and off switch for your emotions, right? It would be great if you could wake up in the morning and say, right, I want to feel love and excitement today, and then just switch it on. And we can't do that. But yeah, wouldn't that be great? Well, I'd be out of a job, so it wouldn't be that great, but it would be great for humanity. But we know that, how we feel is so heavily influenced by what we do, what we don't do, the time and attention that we give to certain thoughts and others, how we speak to ourselves in our heads, how we treat our body. So we can use those things that we can influence to then shift our emotional state. And they're sort of like, they're so closely entwined. They're like weaves in a basket.
Yes.
And we don't always, we're busy, we get on with life, and we don't experience them separately or notice each part of those experiences. We experience the basket as a whole. And often what happens in therapy is we take the basket and we start to pick weaves out and say, well, what about this bit, and how did that impact on the whole, and how did that impact, and once you start to sort of build that awareness of the different detailed aspects of your experience, you can then pick out areas for potential change. If I do that, when I do this, I can shift my emotional state, or I'm more able to manage a difficult emotional state, and those sorts of things.
Yeah. What I like about the approach in the book and the approach of these therapies is they're inviting us to change the narrative from it's because of that I am blah, to that is reflecting to me something within me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it didn't cause this, it happened and helped bring awareness to what I need to face here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's moving from
absolutely.
a blame mentality or a blame narrative to where can I be responsible?
Yeah, and that's a sort of a lovely aspect of sort of compassion focused therapy, is this sort of general theme that, yes, this stuff happened to you and it was awful and it wasn't your fault, but here you are. And
Yes.
while it's not your fault that you're here, it is your responsibility to make change if you want a different life to this, if you want something different. And sometimes, that, I think that process, when it's done right, can be really empowering for people, because you stop with the self-loathing thing, you stop with the blame game, and that generally holds you back and keeps you stuck in a cycle, and enables you to take responsibility for yourself from a place of compassion, um, and curiosity as well. Seeing sort of trials for change as experiments, and, well, let's try this and see what happens, and what do I learn about myself when I try that, and what do I learn about myself when I try this. And so a lot of my efforts in therapy is often turning people from a stance of self-criticism and self-loathing to curiosity. Often people will bring some sort of anecdote or something that's happened, and fill it with self-criticism or, you know, something that they feel shameful or embarrassed about. And we just shift it. Well, let's look at that with curiosity, because this is really interesting. Like, what does this show us about why we feel stuck, and how can it help us to understand the way out? And inevitably, looking at things with that mindset is just so much more helpful. And then I think what you can then do is start to fall forward. So when you make mistakes, you can use them to your advantage and keep moving forward in whatever direction it is you're trying to go in.
One of the things I heard recently and I really like, and I'm going to misquote it terribly, so how they said it was beautiful and graceful and wonderful, and this is my version of it, is we can't build a great life trying to fix what we don't love. We build a great life by moving the direction of the great life. And to me, this is not trying to fix us, because that's, as you say, not what's needed. But it's providing a way of helping us course correct. Is that how you would sense what you were sharing?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, there's a lot of some of the aspects that come from acceptance and commitment therapy are around the importance of values, and distinguishing those from goals. And you know, a goal is something that you can you get to that point, you achieve it, and it's done. You know, so a goal might be, I want to pass my exam. So you get there, you do it, it's finished. Whereas your value would be the reason that you took the exam in the first place. So maybe you value lifelong learning or challenging yourself or whatever that is. And that is something that's never ending. It's just a path that you always try to steer close to. And life pulls you away from it, because that's what life does, right? Sometimes priorities change for a while for whatever reason. And often it's about this awareness to kind of look up for a minute, check where those paths are that are your sort of value system, and have I been steered away from something that matters to me? And if so, then I can course correct and come back towards that path. So you always try to stay close to it if you can, knowing that you'll never always be doing that perfectly, but it's a great way to, I think a lot of people come to therapy and they're not really sure what the problem is, but they feel lost. And more often than not, that at those times, it can often be a disconnect from values. So, you know, life being what it is has pulled people away from something that really matters to them, or from being the person that they want to be. And something just doesn't feel right. And often just
reactivity and just reacting to what's going on instead of being proactive in what could go on.
Yeah. And so sometimes the solutions in that way are really simple, and it's about sort of being self-aware about what are my values, what is most important to me, and not in terms of what do I want to happen to me, but what kind of person do I want to be, and how do I want to face these different challenges that I've got in front of me. What kind of parent do I want to be? What kind of friend do I want to be? What kind of colleague or boss or partner do I want to be? And turning that idea into sort of concrete behavioral terms, so that you can think, if I am at my best and how I want to be, how would I behave? How would I talk to people? How would I move? What would I do?
How would I talk to myself?
Yeah, I'm a huge one, right? And sometimes that just gives us that shift of, oh yes, actually those things are really, really important to me. They're really high up on my value system, but I'm not living in line with them right now. So how can I shift direction and move back in that direction? And inevitably when you do, things just feel different. Things just feel more aligned. It doesn't make life easy. You're still facing challenges, but you have this sense of meaning that when you are working towards something and you move forward, you get that hit that says, I'm on the right path. I know I'm doing this for a reason.
Well, I'm on my path, which is this overused word of authenticity. But I know I value spiritual freedom. I value vitality. I value love. I value playfulness, I value creativity and adventure. I know when I'm coming from a place aligned with that, I feel, because I always assess how was my day, and I can come to the end of my day saying I was aligned. I might not have hit my goals, but I lived my truth, and that matters, because hitting the goal happens like that and then it's done. But if each day as I'm moving towards that goal, I'm aligned with what is true to me, every day is going to feel a lot better than the days when I'm just in reaction, hoping I hit the goal.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a longer term. It's not the same the hit that you get from reaching a goal, but reaching a goal, that sort of hit you get is very short term, right? You get this moment. Yeah, I mean, I thought when we sort of hit the Sunday Times bestseller list over here, I thought that, gosh, that would be an incredible moment. We sort of found out before the paper came out, so they sort of let you know a few days before. And I thought, gosh, when I go and get that paper from the shop, I'm going to be in tears, and it's going to be this. And it wasn't this big emotional moment. It was, oh, yeah, that's cool, that's great. And then, a few weeks after, it kept staying at number one for weeks and weeks and weeks, and it's still there now. And it still feels good that there isn't that same rush that I anticipated there would be, because it is a sort of, it's a point, isn't it? It's a sort of stake in the road. But when I get, messages from people saying, I read the book and it's changed everything, I just wanted to say thank you. Those moments stay with me for longer. And so even though, reaching those sorts of milestones is brilliant and does give you that hit, they are short term, because you just keep moving the goalposts.
Yes.
You just, next time I want it to be there for even more weeks or whatever, next time I want to sell even more. And you can just keep going, and you do, inevitably you do. You'll never feel enough. And so if you focus on a purpose that's outside of you as well, that's sort of being able to be useful in the world, there's something that just keeps that drive going.
I think it also helps to not try and get the goal, but to become the person who's able to get the goal. So yeah. I think values-laden decisions moving me towards my goals means I'm growing every day as I find new ways to experience my values rather than just aiming for the hit. There's plenty of research on this. I'm sure you're familiar that people who just go for the goal, the Hedonia of just getting the goal or getting what they want, it's a much shorter term fix than the meaningfulness of I'm doing what I'm committed to. This fulfills me. This has meaning to me. This has significance to me. That hit that you speak about, everyone thinks if they win the lotto, it's going to change everything. Yet research shows again and again, it doesn't change it doesn't. Happiness blips up and then returns to where it was. So if we can take that in, we can already make better decisions for the quality of our life. Stop going for the rush you think you're going to get with the goal. Instead, how are you going to create today? I also call it delaying happiness. I'll be happy when I've achieved, rather than, well, what about this moment? I like investing in this moment.
It's so true, isn't it? And you can kind of keep putting off happiness, and I'll be okay when, or I'll be kinder to myself when I, and putting some sort of arbitrary value on being enough, and you never get to that place. It's you can never just convince yourself that you're enough. And in the last 2 years, we've done these incredible things and lots of things that I never would have imagined doing, but they haven't changed who I am or how much value I placed on myself. And I was talking to my daughter about that, she's saying, wow, what's that like to have all those followers? And I said, I'm still exactly the same. It doesn't mean anything. I'm exactly the same. I'm doing what I can to help lots of people, but it doesn't say anything about who I am as a person. If I switched it all off tomorrow, if I closed the account tomorrow, I'd still be exactly the same.
And I heard on another podcast, you'd probably still be the same in that you really struggle to do it, and it takes you a lot of effort because you're actually quite a person who likes to be alone and to do your own thing. And I found that fascinating, because on TikTok, you're out there, but your preference is a different gear. I loved that.
Yeah, for sure. It hasn't been that I had sort of ambitions to be this public person or anything. It came out of wanting to be of service, and then very quickly those messages that were coming through from real people saying, wow, I tried this idea with my family, and it's really helping, or you inspired me to get into therapy and that's really helping, and just wanted to say thanks, and those sorts of things that inspired us to keep going. And then the whole thing has become a process of me practicing what I preach. And every time, I've had sort of several opportunities now to go on live TV, and And each time I knew that if I said no, it would be out of fear. And so I had to say yes, because and doing so has created this shift in me, that every time I do those kind of things, I can find out that I am capable of more than I thought. And so I keep sort of pushing myself, and not in the name of trying to be liked or trying to be known, but in this service, in this, this value system that I have around making this stuff available to people so they can use it to help themselves. Having that value alongside it enables me to push myself out of the comfort zone. And it's more important to me if I can help somebody by going on live TV or whatever it is, then it's worth the discomfort. It's more important to me to keep helping people because I can see that it's working than it is to be comfortable and at home with a hot chocolate in front of the TV.
So let's apply CBT to that. So one of the things that I love in the book and I've loved about CBT is the distortions that we do in our thinking. Can we talk about some of those distortions? And let's use this real life example where, because you talk about in the book climbing Pisa and not loving heights, but I love this example as well where you're going on TV. So what are a couple of the distortions someone might do if they're facing getting outside of their comfort zone? What could they be telling themselves? And let's place it in some of those language distortions or thinking distortions.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great example actually, because it happened recently. I went on the biggest morning show in the UK, and
Terrific.
it's live.
I watched it. You're great.
Oh, did you? Yeah. And I was nervous as hell, and there were these few seconds before they count down because the ads are on and you're all ready to go. And you think you're fine, and then they do that final countdown, and you have this rush of adrenaline. And you think this, and it's the catastrophizing thoughts that rush in that say, "Here's the worst case scenario. I'm just going to play it out for you in your mind like a horror story."
Thanks,
And then you can just make it happen. And thankfully, that's where the tools come in handy. Because you face these moments, you feel terrified, and what I was able to do was notice there's the catastrophizing thoughts. I can go with those and I can start playing those out in my mind. And then I'm going to be so anxious that I'm not going to be able to focus on the job I need to do right now. Or I can acknowledge that as a bias and something that's going to lead me down a road I don't want to go. And then I can turn to this very moment and focus on doing the thing that I know I can do. And going with it. And that's what I did. And I just shifted my attention. I allowed those thoughts to, it's not that I was, super confident and never doubted myself along the way. I woke up that very morning going, what am I doing to myself? Why am I doing this? And then I had to answer that question with, this is why. Because, if people keep saying to me, this book is changing my life. And so if I can impact someone's life in even a slightly positive way, to me, that's a good job done.
Well, I think catastrophizing is a big part of what people do when they distorting their thoughts. My record, this is 18 years ago, and why I became a coach. So I became a coach not to get clients, but to help myself. I just thought there must be these secret skills that no one gave me when I turned 16. I want the secret skills. So I trained to become a coach with no expectations, and my catastrophizing was so good. My record was 4 hours of catastrophizing before I realized what I was doing to myself. It took me till 2 a.m. laying in bed for 4 hours before I realized what I was doing. Wow. I think I'm very good at everything I do because I'm also an overachiever, but
you're good at catastrophizing as well.
Good at catastrophizing. I think it's a massive one. What's a couple of other ways we can distort our thinking?
So some other common ones. I mean, I talk about, I did a video on the mental filter, I call it. So it's this idea that your mind will hold on to information. There's lots of conflicting information that comes from the outside environment all the time, but your mind will often hold on to information that confirms how you feel or what you believe about yourself. And when I did the video, I had different sized beans and I had this massive tray, this kind of sieve And I said, imagine you put some content online and loads of really positive comments start coming through, right? And you kind of pour them all in.
Nice.
And then there's one or two people that say something nasty, and those beans are bigger, right? So your brain, without realizing it, kind of does this, and it shakes up the beans, and inevitably all the smaller positive comments fall through. And what you're left with, what your brain focuses on, is these one or two comments. So out of maybe, I don't know, 100 positive comments, you hold on to these two nasty ones, and you just focus on them and you ruminate on them for the rest of the day. And that's a bias, because essentially that's probably 2% of the response you got that you're holding on to and neglecting or letting go of any information that suggests otherwise. And I think the thing is with these thought biases or cognitive distortions is we all do them. They are part of being human, and they help us, in lots of different situations. They help. It's our brain helping to keep us safe. And yeah, when you're making yourself vulnerable, like in a situation where you're putting yourself online, you are vulnerable to social rejection or judgment, abandonment from loved ones, whatever that is. And so your brain's trying to keep you safe. It's saying, let's just check out if this is a danger. And so you're looking for those negative comments and you're focusing on them. But essentially that can, in a world where we're not only surrounded in our family and friends anymore, we're surrounded by anyone online from across the world who can, do the sort of keyboard warrior thing and write something because they're angry at something else happened in that day. And so, but your brain still works in the same way. So, you'll still feel that same fear and threat that you would get if it was someone in your sort of close community judging you in that way. So yeah, I think the mental filter is another big one that can really probably affect people a lot in this sort of online world now.
And what can we do with that one? How can we help ourselves using the techniques you've got?
Well, with all of these biases, the most simple and powerful thing is to be clear that they are biases, and notice them and label them for what they are. So when you have a thought, the power of any thought is in how much you buy into it. And if you take on a thought, so you can't stop thoughts from coming into your head. So a thought will arrive, and your brain is offering up one perspective or way of understanding the world for what it is right now. And that's one idea. So you can either take that on as a true reflection of reality, 100% fact. And when you do, it will then impact on how you behave, how you feel, your choices you make, all of those things. Whereas if you kind of give it, put it at arm's length, and you put it back and you kind of see it for what it is, you're saying, there's a bias, that's the mental filter, I'm just going to hold it back here. And I've done that before, and I've put in the early days when I put a video out, and I could feel myself scrolling through, passing all these lovely comments, and I'm looking for, just checking, does anyone hate this? Does anyone hate this?
Yeah.
And what I was able to do was then go, here's my mental filter. I'm looking for the bad news here. Yeah. And just by doing that, you take the power out of that thought.
Yes.
So I mean, in the book, I talk about the you remember the Jim Carrey movie, The Mask?
Yeah. Yes.
And how, so he finds this old mask. It doesn't look like hardly anything, and it is nothing until he puts it on his face. So when you hold something right in front of your face and it's all you can see, then it impacts on how you feel and what you do. But the minute you kind of remove the mask and you can sort of hold it at arm's length, it takes the power out of it. So I would say get familiar with the different, there's lots of different thought biases, and you can just Google them, and there's lots of ones that are recognized, and just by noticing them gives you some freedom.
It does. And also deciding, just because I've thought it for 20, 30, 40 years doesn't make it true. Just because it's so familiar to us, we can still question it. It's not being disloyal to ourselves. I've got some notes here. I'd like to go. So one of the things you talk about, and I'll go to one of my favorites. The difference between, and it hasn't been asked on a podcast yet, because I thought you had some of the questions have been the same. So I thought I hadn't come across this one. And I don't know if I'll pronounce it correctly. The difference between procrastination and Hedonia.
Yeah. So, anhedonia is that sort of symptom. It's one of the symptoms of depression, where you you kind of lose pleasure in the things that you used to find enjoyable. So you start to withdraw even from your hobbies or your friends, and so the things that you used to find pleasurable and now feel kind of full of effort.
Yes.
Which is kind of different to procrastination, which is often where you're putting something off because even the idea of it kind of either fills you with stress or there's some sort of aversive emotion attached to it. So, I'll put off going through looking for a new insurance company because that's really boring to me, or I know it's going to stress me out sitting on hold on a phone for an hour or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So there's a feeling that you kind of don't want to have and you're not driven towards, and so you'll procrastinate. Or around stress, so something feels stressful, or the idea of engaging in this activity fills you with some sort of threat or stress, and so you put it off. But yeah, the two are sort of distinguishable in the sense that you can procrastinate when something is aversive to you in some way, but when you start to lose interest in everything, that's slightly different and a bit more concerning around your mental health, and often associated with like low mood and things like that. Whereas procrastination is something we all do.
Yeah. And a lot of your books about what to do about that, which is what I love about it. So it's a very proactive book. You can pick up any page and it's going to share what are some signs, what can you do about it, all the way through the book. It's very hands-on. So one of my favorite topics is emotions. I just love chatting about emotions, diving into it. All our viewers love, not all, a lot of our viewers, that would be an example of a mental filter. Everyone.
Oh, love it.
Everyone, all the time, everywhere I go, talking about emotions. So some of the things that when I work with clients, I see them doing, and you talk about this, is what not to do with emotions. So they'll push them away, they'll treat them as if they're facts, they'll make decisions from the place of a darker, temporary emotion. Can you speak to that a little bit, please?
Yeah. So when you feel something that's uncomfortable, which a lot of emotions are, the most natural human response is to push it away, block it out, try and make it go away. So get relief in whatever way you can. And that's what a lot of emotions are there for, right? That, something like anxiety is supposed to be uncomfortable. It's supposed to agitate us into action because it's there to keep us safe. But often what we do in our sort of modern lives is do certain things to block it out. So maybe we eat, or we stay really busy and don't give ourselves time to sit still so that we feel the emotion, or lots of different things. And maybe you don't even notice the feeling. Maybe you're so good at blocking them out you don't even notice they've appeared. You just notice that you get home from a really stressful day and you've got your head in the fridge, and then your plan is to watch Netflix until you pass out, or whatever those things are. And so we have these sort of blocking behaviors, and essentially what they do is kind of keep us trapped. Because if let's say you're not wanting to feel grief, for example, you've got these really sort of painful emotions associated with grief, and you don't want to feel it, so you stay busy. You just take on as much as you possibly can at work or something like that, and then people become afraid of stopping, because essentially when you have to at some point, all of those feelings are just there waiting to have their moment to be processed. And so people know that if I sit down for a day, it's all going to come flooding back, and so I just can't possibly do it. And then we end up in this trap, which is real and healthy. So I think a lot of what happens in therapy is teaching people to be able to sit with emotion, and almost welcome it, whether it's uncomfortable or not, allow it to be present. And I often use this sort of metaphor in therapy, which is often really helpful. If you imagine you're kind of stood in the sea up to about kind of waist height, and the waves are sort of coming towards you. And if you try to hold a wave back, let's say those waves are emotions coming at you. If you try to stop one of those waves from hitting the shore, you're going to take a tumble, right? And you're going to end up with a mouthful of water or whatever. But if you accept that those waves are coming, and you allow them to naturally pass by, so you might you might change your stance, right? You might brace yourself, bend your knees so that you're ready to be kind of swept off your feet for a moment by it if it's really intense, but then you're going to be ready to kind of land back down and carry on, ready for the next one. And inevitably then those waves pass by naturally and hit the shore. So it's the same with emotions, really. They're not who you are, they're experiences washing over you. And often they have a good bit of information about what you care about and what's important to you and those kind of things.
How
So
you've been neglecting yourself, how you've been bypassing
yeah,
the feelings, you haven't been feeling good about yourself. I mean, there's so much information coming through our emotions. And you're
yeah,
right, some people aren't even in touch with them. So
yeah.
for me, to ignore my emotion or to shut it, which I'd be terrible at anyway. But if that was the part, yeah, that's not me.
You love emotion.
Just trying to imagine shutting it down. I've got no relationship with that. I actually go further. I would say we can get dunked by the wave of the emotion, but knowing we are going to come up spluttering.
Yeah.
But trying to avoid the dunking altogether means we're constantly going to be afraid of the wave, which means that aspect of life we're going to avoid. So it's to me, it's a way of hiding from parts of ourselves.
Absolutely. And it is life changing when people change their relationships with this aspect of our experience that is there all the time. Emotions come and go all the time, and if you're able to sit with them and allow them to pass naturally, then that's exactly what they do. They come and they go, and we can learn. Sometimes we learn from them, sometimes we don't. Sometimes they're just painful,
Yes.
and that's okay. And but we build our ability to know that we can tolerate it, and that's often the work of therapy, is sitting with people while they're experiencing painful emotion so that they can build up that experience of experiencing it and knowing that they got through it and knowing that they are strong enough to get through it.
That builds self-trust. So I could go, the way I talk about it is, and you're right, it can be done through therapy, but for me, because I'm willing to go to my emotions and sit with them and own them and embrace them and integrate them, I'm more able to be present to somebody else when they have their experience, whatever it is. I'm not discomforted by their hurt, pain, sadness, or grief. Whereas if I don't do the work and embrace those aspects of me, I'm going to discourage those aspects of them in others, which is how people miss each other when it comes to missing vulnerability. Well, if I can't sit with sadness, I'm not going to have you sit with sadness. So it becomes, and sadly, is how we miss each other when it comes to intimate moments.
Yeah, absolutely. And the most natural human response when you see someone you love in pain or distress is to do anything to try and make it better for them, right? We want to scoop them up and rescue them and fix the problem and make it go away. And actually sometimes being the rescuer can be detrimental for both of you. It makes you feel good as the rescuer because you feel like you're doing something in this really uncomfortable moment. But often we can disempower the other person.
Yep.
Because they then think that it's the people around them that make it all better rather than experiencing themselves have the courage to work through it. So
well, it's more than that. If someone tries to fix me when I'm feeling whatever I'm feeling, I feel minimized.
Yeah.
Because right now I'm sitting with something painful and they're telling me what to do as a solution, but that means I'm not feeling hurt at all.
Yeah.
That's what I love about someone sitting with me, because you talk about grief and how to support someone here. And I think it's a really good point. You don't have to solve it. You can be with them as they experience it. And sometimes I think when people try to support someone, what they're really doing is saying, I'm uncomfortable by you being uncomfortable. I'll feel more comfortable if I could help you, and then all this bad stuff can stop. Just be with them. Let them feel what they're feeling.
Yeah, I think it's also a sort of misunderstanding about how powerful it is to be with someone through something that often people don't need advice. They know what they need to do, but there's a sort of emotional block somewhere and something's stopping them. But if they know that somebody has their back and that someone that cares about them enough to want to walk through the thing with them, that is so transformative for people and so powerful. And also, if you're not the kind of person that feels able to contain distress with someone, you just feel like, I don't know how to ask them about it. And if they tell me about it, I don't really know what I'm going to do with it because I don't have those skills. That's okay. We don't have to put ourselves on the pedestal of being the therapist. I've worked with people before who maybe are sort of grieving or something, and they're in pain all the time. And then they talk about these friends that turn up on the regular and just go out for a dog walk with them. And then they just chat, they talk about the local gossip or whatever. They tell jokes, they talk about TV shows they've been watching. And it's this beautiful hour of distraction from everything they're going through. It's okay to be that friend that says, yeah, come on, we're going out for a coffee every week and we're going to chat about nothing. And that's okay, because there is a place for that. And often when you're going through something, it's okay to have time to sort of replenish a little bit before the next wave of emotion comes.
Yes, absolutely. I think the important thing is, if we're going to support someone's experiencing grief, don't avoid them. It's compounding how they feel. They're feeling bad enough, and then the very feeling we need, which is to feel that we belong in that moment of loss and grief, the only thing we can do is compound their hurt. So show up, be inadequate. Like, it's okay to say, I don't know what to say. The words aren't here for me. I'm with you. I feel for you. And I want to know I'm beside you. That is really awesome to say, I feel lost with this, but I'm right here anyway. That's much more powerful than avoiding them because you're worried about making a mistake, which isn't about them at all. One of the things, let's focus on people pleasers, one of my favorite topics. I'm a recovering caretaker, not a recovering people pleaser, but I can see the echoes of people pleasing in me. So one of the things you talk about people pleasing, you talk about spotlight effect. Do you mind? I know you've spoken about it on a couple of podcasts. Do you mind? I loved this.
Yeah.
Do you mind talking about this?
It's a really kind of fascinating bit of research that we all overestimate how much other people are focusing on us and judging us negatively. And the research says that we get this wrong almost all of the time. We overestimate how much other people are looking at us and judging us, except when we're on a stage. So the people that generally get it accurate are, actors on a stage actually doing something and in that way and having an audience. So,
or when you were on TV.
Yes. Hoping you don't humiliate yourself in front of the nation, that kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, it's and I find that a fascinating bit of research, that it's just one of those little biases that we make, and it's your brain trying to keep you safe. It's just saying that, there are people around, so if they're looking, this is what I want to present, this is the safe way to present myself. But what happens is we, especially if we are kind of socially anxious in any way, we are then constantly misinterpreting how much we're being judged, and then making our decisions based on that. That if you withdraw socially because you feel that everyone is thinking about you and judging you negatively, then it's a mistake, right? Because that's a bias in your thinking. So again, I think just being aware of something like the spotlight effect helps hugely, that actually less people are focused on you than you think. And even of those people focused on you, they tend to have more positive evaluations of you than you would think, because your brain gets it wrong, because your brain's just trying to keep you safe. It's not really interested in, it's not really interested. Your brain isn't interested in whether people love you or not. It's just looking out for the people that don't, so it can keep you alive.
Yeah, I love that. So we can take that immediately. And then we're not going to do affirmations anymore, are we?
Yeah. So, well, again, this was something
no more affirmations for you.
Yeah. Well, this was something that came up while I was researching, actually, for the book, that using sort of, I mean, there's lots of things like affirmations online, aren't there, and on social media and stuff, saying, and I am loved, I am strong, and I am this, that, and the other, and asking people to repeat those things. And when I sort of looked into the research, I found out that those sorts of things can be detrimental to certain people. So if you have core beliefs around, let's say, being unlovable, and you constantly have to tell yourself in a mirror every day, I am lovable, then what that can do is actually set up a little kind of internal argument in your own mind about whether you are or not, because inevitably those old belief systems come up to say, oh, hang on a minute, but actually this happened to you, which suggests
I've
to
got
us
about
that you're not.
30,000 things to say about that just before you.
Yeah. Let's just have a little debate about
Let me
this
start at the list.
yeah. And
Yeah.
so those sorts of internal arguments then become detrimental to people and make them feel worse. So but people who have generally sort of high self-esteem and things like that tend to maybe get a little sort of short-term boost from saying nice things about themselves, because if you already believe in it, then it kind of engages you with that and you get in touch with it, which can feel good in the moment, but the effects are generally short-lived. But I found the stuff on sort of mantras and things like that more helpful, and I used a lot in things like sports. So sort of top athletes will use kind of affirmations or mantras around, but they're very instructional. So instead of them saying I am the best, it would say something like, when X, Y, or Z happens, I do this. It's sort of instructional about the process.
Good.
So when
great.
this, do this.
Yeah.
So it helps them to get through really high pressure moments to perform
We can all
the
use
way
that.
they need to.
That's really helpful.
Yeah.
We can all use that. Yeah. So it doesn't have to be a high performance athlete. I can just be doing something, thinking, well, when this happens, I'm going to do that. It's the same as visualizing shoot. There's studies that show if you shoot the basket in your mind, you'll improve, even if you didn't rehearse in reality. I like that. Yeah. So the two affirmations I discourage in my community is let it go and don't take it personally.
Yeah.
Let it go, yes, spiritually is true, but there are a number of steps we need to learn about and skills we need before we get to the mastery of letting something go. That's a really big, or forgive. I've got three that are just, hang on, let's really question whether this good advice is good for you. So let it go is a big ask when someone's experienced trauma or someone's really feeling stuck with some pain. Just let it go. You don't need to hold on to that. He's out of your life. You're fine now. Let it go is really minimizing to someone who's experiencing the pain and the grief of the loss, even if they initiated letting that person out of their life. The other one I'm not a big fan of is don't take it personally. It's personal. There is a part of us that is going to feel it. There could be an abandoned part of us or a hurt part of us. And to say to somebody, don't take it personally, they didn't mean it, that's literally asking the brain to do something it's not designed to do. Because if I take it personally, I prevent it happening again and I hopefully protect myself from that hurt. Do you have any thoughts on those? Do you like those?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? The kind of take it personally one, because they're, one of the listed thought biases is personalizing. And in some ways, that's a sort of more helpful approach, isn't it? To, like you say, the don't take it personally is really invalidating, and it suggests that you took it personally in a conscious way on purpose, that you chose to do that. And actually, personalizing is a thought bias. So it's a way that your brain is set up to keep you safe again. So it's that idea that let's say you're walking down the street and you see a friend on the other side of the road and you wave and she doesn't wave back, and your mind goes, oh, she hates me. All my friends must be talking about me. Maybe I've done something wrong. I said, that thing I was worried about, it must have been the wrong thing to say. Now they must all hate me. Oh gosh, how am I ever going to face them all? When actually, that would be a personalizing bias where your brain is saying that ambiguous information that says something about who you are as a person and whether people like you or not. And your brain is anticipating some sort of rejection. So it's trying to keep you safe. Okay. So it's trying to sort of say, there's signs here that you're not fully accepted. But it's a bias. It's going to the worst case scenario on that front. So
thinking some situations a bit bigger than that, because I do agree that is a bias that we can manage by questioning it. I was thinking of something more significant, like someone walks into our face and starts abusing us, like literally is quite not ambiguous about their thought, or they literally do a personal attack and they pay out with a stream of trolling on Facebook or whatever. Don't take it personally.
Yes. Yeah.
I'll get there, but can I just do a couple of things before that?
and it's a bit sort of gaslighty, isn't it? This
Yes.
idea that I can behave how I would like to you, but then I can follow it up with don't take it personally, which suggests that your reaction to it is wrong. And if someone does something that's hurtful towards you or abusive towards you, then it's so important. And again, it's about your relationship with your emotional state, isn't it? That if you see that as information that, ouch, this hurts, that person is hurting me, if you invalidate that by saying don't take it personally, then
you shut down that emotional journey. You're not going to have that emotional experience. You're just going to block it under the journey of, I'm not going to take anything personally, I'm just going to let it go. And it's just shortcutting the work.
And you probably make yourself vulnerable to a certain degree as well from other people. So I guess it always depends on the situation, doesn't it? But I think telling someone not to take it personally is so invalidating.
It can be really hurtful. So, well, let me feel it first and then figure out what part of this I was taking personally, because I get that they're abusing me with their stuff. I'll get there. But right now I've got a visceral response. My heart rate is up. I've gone bright red with the stress of it. I've got a fright response or a runaway response kicking in. Can I just take a moment and then I'll get to the more aligned position of it wasn't about me? And I think that if we can ease ourselves into that, getting to it's not personal becomes quicker with practice. But to just immediately tell someone not take it personally, can I just do a little bit of work with my therapist first? I'll get there. And sometimes it's about kind of acknowledging that potential bias, the sort of personalizing bias, and then asking yourself, okay, here, and this happens in DBT a lot, is allowing yourself to feel something and then asking yourself, is this emotion warranted? Is it proportional to the situation? And just kind of allowing yourself to be curious about, is this emotional reaction reflective of, a past trauma or something? Or is it proportional to this situation so that I can then respond in a way that I want to? See, what we're doing now is filling in the gap between the hurt thing, taking it personally. There's all these skills we need to learn before we can do the cliche of don't take it personally. These are all skills we need to learn to just, it wasn't about me, it was their stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes you need to take some things personally in order to keep yourself safe or to do the right thing, because you might have done something not great, or, you might need to turn on your heel for something that you've done, or, so it's important to always just be curious about the whole situation.
We're getting low on time, but a couple of areas for those of you who haven't seen me hold the book up yet. Why has nobody told me this before? Beautiful cover, by the way. Did you have a hand in this cover?
Well, it was a joint sort of process with Penguin, so we had a few different ideas that went back and forth, and
nice. But one of the things we're not going to get time to go into is we're not our mistakes and feelings of not being enough, and I think these are really critical. Maybe we'll just pull one. There were so many things I bookmarked here. We'll do one of my personal favorites, finding your compassionate side. So there's self-criticism. And then if you can speak to that a little bit, and then we'll get into, okay, so how can we be compassionate in the face of that? Because this would be someone's top 10 for sure. Like most people I speak to, top 10 things that hurt me is I'm critical of myself.
Yeah, we're all our own worst critics, aren't we? And we can kind of bring ourselves to our knees just without saying a word, because it all happens inside our own heads. And
sometimes like that fast.
And it can be relentless. I've worked with people in therapy where, sometimes a great tool has been to almost write on a piece of card or a paper self-critical thought, because sometimes it becomes so relentless that you don't even notice it anymore. It just becomes how you talk to yourself. And so sometimes when it's that relentless for people, we'll have this kind of card, and I will just this is one of my children's cards for something else, but we literally just kind of flash it. So when I hear a self-critical thought, there it is, did you notice that? So that you just get into the habit of noticing how many of your thoughts are self-critical, self-loathing, and unwarranted personal attacks on yourself. And because if how you speak to yourself in your head sounds more like a bully than it does a best friend, it will be holding you back. I guarantee it. There's a reason why, I'll go back to the sort of, the elite athletes and stuff. Serena Williams would never dream of hiring her high school bully to be her coach for tennis, right? It just would not work. She works with people that inspire her, that have her back, that she trusts, that whether she makes a mistake or has a victory, they are able to learn from each experience and then get better. So someone who has her best interests at heart, and I mean, I just picked out her, but any other athlete, everybody wants to do their best in life and to feel good while they're doing it. And so why wouldn't you want a coach rather than, an old critical voice from years gone by? It makes a huge difference.
It's interesting to me that so many people will want validating comments made to them by other people that they don't do for themselves.
Yeah.
I read a really cool thing. Again, I'm going to misquote terribly. If you're strong enough to be there for others, surely you're strong enough to learn how to be there for yourself.
Yeah. And do you know what? When I'm doing sort of compassion focused therapy with people, the interesting thing is often those people who are hardest on themselves express so much compassion to other people. Yes. And so I'm never really teaching someone compassion for the first time.
Just
you are yeah, lots of those people radiate compassion beyond anything you could imagine, but they don't allow themselves to have any of it. And it can be really, really uncomfortable for those people to even receive kindness from other people because they're not used to it.
That's it.
So it's and the thing is about compassion is there's this huge misconception that it's the indulgent thing or the easy thing, and actually compassion isn't hardly ever the easiest thing. It's mostly the hardest thing to do in a situation. So I don't know, let's say my daughter doesn't feel like going to school because she just doesn't, because she's a kid. People might think that the compassionate thing would be to say, oh, okay, well, let's stay home today and see how you feel tomorrow. That's not compassion. Compassion is, I want the absolute best for you in your life, and your education is a huge part of that. And so we're going to work through this uncomfortable feeling and get you there, and then see what we learn from that. And so, getting her to school is because I feel compassionate towards her and I want the absolute best for her. So I'm going to encourage her to do the tough thing, the hard thing, the getting out of bed and making something happen, because I know it will lead to a better outcome for her in the future. And it's the same with us. Sometimes the compassionate thing is to go ahead and tackle that pile of bills, or do the exercise that we don't want to do because we know it will help us in the long run. A lot of my work as well is sort of tackling that misconception that compassion is kind of easy, lovey-dovey kindness and self-indulgence, and going to a spa retreat and kind of blocking out the world. It's more than that. It's those day-to-day doing the best by yourself.
I think self-compassion is one of the toughest things we all need to learn. It is a skill many of us aren't taught. So for me, I used to think self-compassion or self-care was having the chocolate, giving myself the treat, taking a time out. I'll watch the TV show I love. I'll give myself a little reward. It was all about hedonia. It was all about reward after reward after reward. To me, self-compassion now is sitting with what's uncomfortable and loving myself through it and letting myself be where I'm at and not making myself pretend I'm not. That to me is self-compassion today. So, and that's tough sometimes. Sometimes I really would rather have the chocolate, frankly. And I'm not saying I don't.
Yeah, exactly. It's doing those tough things for yourself, isn't it? It's having the strength to have your own back no matter what. And that's when the strength and the confidence that comes from that means that you don't, people will worry about, well, what happens if this happens in the future or that happens and I don't know if I can cope with it. And a lot of our work is around, you don't have to know what's going to happen, and you don't have to have only good things happen to you if you have this unrelenting commitment to always do the best by yourself. If you always have your back, then you don't have to worry about whether those people are always going to be there for you, because you will get through it if you take responsibility for you and look after you to the best that you can possibly do.
Self-advocacy is something many of us aren't taught. And I'm just the biggest fan of that. Is there anything you feel that we've missed other than nearly every part of your book that we needed to have covered? Other than that,
No, I mean, it's lovely. It's lovely to chat with you. It's so nice to, I mean, this is such a privilege. This kind of part of it is getting to meet people like you and really deep dive on these kind of subjects. I love it. So yeah, this is my indulgence.
Congratulations with your book. It's wonderful.
Thank you.
No, it's fantastic.
Thank you.
So people can get Why Has Nobody Told Me This Before by Dr. Julie Smith, I assume on Amazon, good bookstores.
Yeah, absolutely. It's everywhere. Or you can go onto my Instagram, and there's links on my bio on Instagram if you can't find it. But yeah, I mean, this book is more well traveled than me now around the world. When it first came out, I had this idea that because it got translated into a few languages, and so let's do a little trip around the world, and we'll go and find it in the bookshops in these different countries, and it's now on something like 30 something different languages. I think I don't know, I can't afford to go around every single country and find it. So I think
you need to
wherever
have
you are in the world
from every different language send you a copy of the book in the different languages.
And it's funny because some of them don't have a sort of straight translation for that phrase for the title, so some of them are slightly different, which is quite funny.
It's wonderful. I trust you're enjoying and embracing all of this.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the grind was the writing in lockdown while homeschooling 3 children. This is the fun bit. So,
that's another conversation. Congratulations.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. It was a real pleasure.